The hiring agency in London had a black mark next to his name. Count Alistair Thorne. They called him the Breaker of Souls. In the last 6 months, 12 highly trained nurses had fled Blackwood Manor in tears, some with bruises, all with shattered pride. They said he was a monster, a paralyzed beast who hated the living. But Elara Vance didn't care about rumors. She didn't care about his temper or his title. She was a widowed mother with a sick child and 0 options left. She wasn't going there to be liked. She was going there to survive. But what she found inside those cold walls wasn't just a broken man. It was a deadly conspiracy. The rain hammered against the roof of the carriage like handfuls of gravel, a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding of Elara Vance's heart. She clutched her thin woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders, not just against the damp chill of the English countryside, but against the dread pooling in her stomach. Inside her satchel was a letter from Dr. Alistair Thorne, no relation to the Count, stating clearly that her daughter, Lily, required the clean air of the Swiss Alps or specialized treatment in London if she was to survive the winter. The cost was astronomical. The debt left behind by Elara's late husband Thomas was equally massive. The carriage lurched to a halt. "Blackwood Manor, ma'am," the driver shouted, his voice muffled by the storm. "I ain't driving up to the door. The horses get spooked near the gates." Elara didn't argue. She stepped out into the mud, her boots sinking inches deep. The manor loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette against the gray sky. It was a sprawling Victorian estate, once majestic, now looking like a wounded animal hiding in the dark. The windows were black, save for a single flickering light in the west wing. She walked the long driveway, head bowed against the wind. "For Lily," she whispered. "Just endure it for Lily." The heavy oak door was opened before she could even knock. A woman stood there, holding a candelabra. She was tall, severe, with hair the color of steel wool pulled back into a tight bun. This was Mrs. Halloway, the housekeeper. "You're late, Mrs. Vance," Halloway said, her voice devoid of warmth. "The train, the weather," Elara stammered, stepping into the grand foyer. It smelled of beeswax, old dust, and something medicinal, camphor and bitterness. "The Count does not care for excuses," Halloway said, turning on her heel. "Follow me. Leave your bag. If you don't last the night, it saves you the trouble of unpacking." Elara blinked. "Is it truly that bad? The agency said he was difficult." Halloway stopped and turned, the candlelight casting long shadows across her face. "Difficult?" "The last girl, a sturdy lass from Yorkshire, left after 4 hours. He threw a porcelain basin at her head. The one before that he psychologically dismantled, until she ran out into the rain without her coat. He is not just paralyzed in body, Mrs. Vance. His spirit is necrotic." Elara swallowed hard. "I need this position, Mrs. Halloway. I am not easily frightened." "We shall see." They walked through the silent house. It was filled with covered furniture, like ghosts standing in the corners. There was no life here, no joy, just the oppressive weight of silence. A few rules, Halloway listed as they climbed the grand staircase. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact if he is in a mood. Do not touch his letters. And under no circumstances are you to let Mr. Reginald into the Count's quarters. "Mr. Reginald?" "The Count's cousin." "The heir-presumptive," Halloway said, her lips thinning. "A vulture waiting for the carcass to cool. Keep him out." They reached a heavy mahogany door at the end of the west wing corridor. Halloway didn't knock. She simply nodded to Elara. "He is awake. He is always awake. Good luck, Mrs. Vance." With that, the housekeeper retreated into the shadows, leaving Elara alone. She took a deep breath, smoothed her damp skirt, and pushed the door open. The room was stiflingly hot. A fire roared in the grate, far too large for the season. The curtains were drawn tight. In the center of the room, in a specialized wheelchair made of dark wood and leather, sat Count Alistair Thorne. He was younger than she expected, perhaps in his early 30s. He had been handsome once, with sharp cheekbones and raven hair, but now he was gaunt, his skin the color of parchment. A thick blanket covered his legs. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair with white-knuckled intensity. He didn't look at her. He was staring into the fire. "Get out!" he rasped. His voice was a low growl, like grinding stones. Elara stepped inside and closed the door. "I cannot do that, my lord. I have been hired to assist you." "I said get out!" He spun the chair around with surprising strength. His eyes were dark, burning with a mix of fury and agony. "I told Halloway no more. No more pitying stares. No more clumsy hands. Leave." Elara didn't flinch. She walked to the window and threw the heavy curtains open. The gray light of the stormy afternoon flooded the room, cutting through the gloom. "What are you doing?" he roared. "Close them." "It smells like a crypt in here," Elara said calmly, her voice steady despite the shaking of her hands. "Fresh air aids recovery." "Recovery?" Alistair let out a sharp, cruel laugh. "There is no recovery from a severed spine, you foolish woman. I am a cripple. I will die in this chair. Now, close the curtains, or I will have you thrown out." Elara turned to face him. She saw the pain etched into the lines of his face. She saw the man who had lost everything, but she also saw the face of her daughter, pale and coughing in a cold London flat. "You can scream at me all you like, Count Thorne," Elara said, removing her shawl. "You can throw things. You can insult me. But I am not leaving. I have a job to do, and I intend to do it. Now, strictly speaking, it is time for your sponge bath. Shall we do this the easy way, or are you going to shout until you lose your voice?" Alistair stared at her. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the crackling fire. He looked genuinely shocked. No one had spoken to him like that in 2 years. Not since the accident. His eyes narrowed. "You think you are brave," he sneered. "They all think they are brave in the first hour. Let us see how you fare when the darkness comes, Mrs. Vance. Let us see if you can handle the monster." "I am not afraid of monsters, my lord," Elara replied, moving toward the wash basin. "I'm a mother. I've dealt with tantrums before." The first 3 days were not a job. They were a siege. Alistair Thorne did not just want to fire Elara. He wanted to break her. He seemed to view her presence as a personal insult, a reminder of his dependency. On the first morning, he accidentally knocked over a tray of scalding tea just as she placed it on his lap. Elara jumped back just in time, the hot liquid splashing her apron. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry out. She simply went to the bathroom, returned with a towel, and began to clean the floor. "Clumsy," he spat, watching her scrubbing the rug. "The cup was in the center of the tray, my lord," she said, not looking up. "Physics suggests it had help falling." "Are you accusing me of lying?" "I am accusing you of wasting good Earl Grey," she retorted. Later that afternoon, he refused to eat. He sat in his chair, staring at the wall, his jaw set like granite. Mrs. Halloway had warned Elara that he often starved himself for days, weakening his already frail constitution. Elara brought in a bowl of hearty beef stew. She placed it on the table. "Take it away." "It looks like slop," Alistair muttered. "It is roast beef and vegetables. It is delicious." "I am not hungry." "That is a lie," Elara said, sitting in the chair opposite him. She picked up the spoon. "Your stomach has been growling for the last hour. It is louder than the storm outside." "I will not be fed like an infant," he shouted, his hand twitching as if he wanted to strike the bowl away. Elara put the spoon down. She leaned forward, her expression hardening. "Do you know who eats like an infant? Infants. Do you know who starves themselves to punish the world for their misfortune?" Cowards. Alistair's face went white with rage. How dare you? I have a daughter, Elara interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper. She is 6 years old. She is sick. She fights for every breath she takes. She would give anything to have that bowl of stew. She would give anything to have a body that works, even half as well as yours does from the waist up. You have wealth, you have a home, you have a mind that is clearly sharp enough to concoct new ways to be cruel, and yet you sit here rotting away because you cannot walk? You are wasting the life that my daughter is fighting to keep. The silence that followed was heavy. Alistair looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. He saw the fraying cuffs of her dress. He saw the dark circles under her eyes. He saw a desperation that matched his own, but directed toward life, not death. He didn't speak. He looked away, toward the window. Elara picked up the spoon again. She didn't try to feed him. She simply pushed the bowl closer to his hand. Then she stood up and walked to the door. I will be back in 20 minutes to collect the tray. If it is full, I will take it to the kitchen. If it is empty, I will bring you a brandy. She closed the door and leaned against it in the hallway, her legs trembling. She was terrifyingly close to being fired. She knew she had crossed a line. When she returned 20 minutes later, the bowl was empty. Elara said nothing. She simply poured a small glass of brandy and placed it on the side table. As she turned to leave, a low voice stopped her. Vance, she turned. Yes, my lord. The stew, it lacked salt. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched Elara's lips. I will inform the cook. The small victory, however, was short-lived. The next day, the real trouble arrived. A carriage pulled up the driveway, shiny and black. Out stepped a man who looked like a softer, doughier version of Alistair. He wore a suit that was too expensive and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Reginald, Mrs. Halloway whispered to Elara as they watched from the upstairs landing. The vulture has landed. Reginald Thorne didn't wait to be announced. He strode up the stairs, brushing past Elara as if she were part of the wallpaper. Alistair! Reginald boomed, bursting into the Count's room. Cousin! I heard you were taking a turn for the worse. I came as soon as I could. Elara followed him in, standing protectively near the bed. Alistair looked at his cousin with undisguised loathing. I am fine, Reginald. You can save your fake tears for the funeral. Nonsense, nonsense, Reginald said, prowling around the room, touching the silver ornaments, eyeing the safe in the corner. I simply worry. You are so isolated here, and with your condition, one must be pragmatic. Have you considered the papers I sent over? The power of attorney? I am paralyzed, Reginald, not lobotomized, Alistair snapped. I can manage my own estate. For now, Reginald said smoothly. He turned his gaze to Elara. And who is this? Another nurse? You go through them like handkerchiefs, Alistair. Pretty thing, though. He stepped closer to Elara, invading her personal space. He smelled of cloying cologne and stale tobacco. I am Reginald Thorne. If you need anything at all, or if my cousin becomes too beastly, you come to me. I pay better than he does. He slipped a coin into Elara's apron pocket. Elara took the coin out and placed it firmly on the table. I am quite happy with my current employer, sir. And Dr. Thorne has ordered quiet for the patient. You are disturbing him. Reginald's eyes flashed with annoyance, but he quickly covered it with a laugh. Loyal. How rare. Very well. He turned back to Alistair. I will be staying in the guest wing for a few days, Alistair, just to ensure you are being cared for properly. There is no need, Alistair growled. Oh, but there is. Family looks after family. Reginald patted Alistair's shoulder, a gesture that made the Count flinch, and walked out. As the door closed, Alistair slumped in his chair, looking suddenly exhausted and smaller. He wants me dead, Alistair whispered. It wasn't a paranoid rave. It was a statement of fact. Elara stepped forward. Why do you say that? Because... Alistair looked at his useless legs. He is the one who arranged the horse ride 2 years ago. The saddle cinch that snapped. It was cut, Elara. It was cut. Elara felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't just working for a difficult man. She was standing guard in a murder house. Then why isn't he in prison? She asked. Proof, Alistair said bitterly. I have no proof. Just a broken back and a slow death in this room. Well, Elara said, her resolve hardening like steel. You have something else now, my lord. And what is that? You have me. And I have very good eyes. That night, Elara didn't sleep. She sat by the door of her small adjacent room, listening to the creaks of the old house. Around 2 a.m. she heard footsteps, soft, deliberate footsteps, stopping right outside Alistair's door. The handle turned slowly. It was locked. Elara had locked it from the inside, against protocol but following her gut instinct. The handle rattled again. Then, the footsteps retreated. Elara let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The war had begun. The following morning, the atmosphere in the manor had shifted. It was subtle, like the change in air pressure before a thunderstorm. Reginald was nowhere to be seen, having claimed he had business in the village, but his presence lingered like a bad smell. Elara's focus, however, was on the small bedside table next to Alistair, specifically a blue glass file labeled simply, Sedative, Dr. M. Black. According to the schedule left by the previous nurse, Alistair was to take 3 spoonfuls a day, morning, noon, and night. It was intended to help with the spasms and the melancholy. Time for your medicine, Elara announced, picking up the spoon. Alistair, who had been staring sullenly at a book without turning the page for 20 minutes, opened his mouth mechanically. His eyes were glazed, the pupils dilated. He looked less like a man and more like a doll. Elara hesitated. She brought the spoon to her own nose. It smelled sweet, sickly so, like rotting almonds masked by peppermint. On a hunch, she dipped her pinky finger into the liquid and touched it to her tongue. A sharp numbness spread instantly across her lips. Opium. And something else, something heavy and metallic. Arsenic? Belladonna? She wasn't a chemist, but she knew what too much laudanum did to a person. It didn't just kill pain, it killed the will. It turned vibrant men into ghosts. What are you doing? Alistair slurred, noticing her hesitation. Changing the prescription, Elara said firmly. She walked to the fireplace and poured the contents of the spoon into the flames. The fire hissed and flared green for a second. Alistair's eyes widened. You can't. I need it. The pain. The pain is real, my lord, but this, she held up the blue bottle, is keeping you in a fog. It is making you weak so you cannot fight. And if you are to survive your cousin, you need to fight. She took the bottle into the bathroom, emptied it into the sink, and rinsed it thoroughly. She refilled it with a mixture of weak chamomile tea and a drop of peppermint oil. From now on, she said, returning to the room, we manage the pain with heat, massage, and whiskey if absolutely necessary. But no more poison. The next 48 hours were hell. Without the heavy sedation, Alistair's body rebelled. He sweated through his sheets. He shook so violently his teeth chattered. He screamed at Elara, calling her a witch, a torturer, a demon sent to torment him. He threw a book at her, striking her shoulder, leaving a bruise that throbbed. Elara didn't leave. She sat by his bed, wiping his forehead with cool cloths. When he cried out in agony from the muscle spasms in his back, she used her strong hands to massage the knots, working for hours until her own fingers cramped. She hummed soft lullabies, the same ones she sang to Lily in the hospital ward. Why? Alistair gasped on the second night, his voice hoarse from screaming. He was soaked in sweat, his hair plastered to his skull. Why do you stay? I am broken. Elara wrung out a cloth and placed it gently on his brow. Because you are not broken, Alistair. You are just buried. It was the first time she had used his first name. He didn't correct her. By the morning of the 4th day, the fever broke. Alistair woke up, and for the first time in 2 years, his eyes were clear. The gray haze was gone. They were a piercing, intelligent blue, sharp, assessing, and alive. He looked at Elara, who had fallen asleep in the armchair next to his bed, her head resting on her hand. He watched her chest rise and fall. He felt a strange sensation in his chest, not pain, but a sudden, overwhelming gratitude that terrified him. "Water," he croaked. Elara snapped awake instantly. She poured a glass and held it to his lips. He drank greedily. "I can think," he whispered, looking at his hands. "My mind. The fog is gone." "Reginald wanted you docile," Elara said quietly. "A drugged man cannot sign checks, but he also cannot ask questions." Alistair's face hardened. "He has been poisoning me. Slowly. Enough to keep you invalid, not enough to kill you quickly and raise suspicion. He needs you to die of natural causes or complications." Alistair looked at her. "You saved my life. I did my job. But now, the real work begins. You have lost muscle mass. You are weak as a kitten. If you want to take your life back, you have to work for it. No more feeling sorry for yourself." Alistair gave a weak, tired smile. It transformed his face, stripping away the cruelty. "You are a tyrant, Mrs. Vance. I have been called worse." She smiled back. "Now, eat your porridge, all of it." That afternoon, the dynamic in the room changed. It was no longer patient and nurse. It was partners in a conspiracy. To pass the time while he regained his strength, Alistair asked Elara to read to him. He pointed to a dusty shelf. "The red leather volume. Shakespeare. The Tempest." Elara opened the book. Her voice was clear and melodic as she read the lines of Prospero, the sorcerer trapped on an island. Alistair closed his eyes, listening. "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." "You read well," he murmured. "Did you read to your husband?" Elara paused. A shadow crossed her face. Thomas was not a man for books. He was a man of numbers and gambling. He preferred the sound of dice to the sound of verse. "He left you with debt," Alistair deduced. "That is why you are here." "He left me with debt, yes. But he also gave me Lily, so I cannot hate him entirely." "Tell me about her." "Lily." Elara put the book down. Her eyes softened. "She is small for her age. She has golden hair that curls when it rains. She loves drawing birds, even though she has never seen a real eagle or a hawk, only pigeons in the city. She has a heart murmur. The doctors say her heart is too big for her body." "She sounds precious," Alistair said, a pang of longing hitting him. He had never thought about children. His life before the accident had been hunting, balls, and business. It seemed so hollow now. "She is my world," Elara said simply, "and I will do whatever it takes to save her." Alistair looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the strength in her jaw, the kindness in her eyes. He felt a stir of something he hadn't felt in years. Attraction? Perhaps, but more than that, admiration. "Then we shall make a pact, Elara," Alistair said. "You help me regain my strength to fight Reginald, and I will ensure Lily gets the best doctors in Europe. I swear it." Elara felt tears prick her eyes. "You would do that? I am a count," he said with a touch of his old arrogance. "I can do anything. Except walk." "We'll see about that," Elara said, wiping her eyes. "Not the walking, perhaps, but the living. Tomorrow we go outside." The argument about going outside lasted for an hour. "I will not be paraded around like a circus freak," Alistair shouted. "It is a private garden behind high walls. No one will see you except the birds and the bees, and frankly, they don't care about your legs," Elara countered, wrestling his heavy wheelchair toward the door. Eventually, he relented, mostly because he realized she was stronger than him and would likely push him out regardless of his protests. The process of getting him downstairs was arduous. Mrs. Halloway helped, her face impassive, though Elara caught a glint of surprise in the older woman's eyes when she saw Alistair actually dressed in a crisp shirt and jacket. shaved and groomed. He looked like a nobleman again. They reached the garden terrace. It was late autumn. The air was crisp and smelled of wood smoke and damp earth. The garden, once manicured, was overgrown. Ivy strangled the statues. Rose bushes had grown wild and thorny. Alistair inhaled deeply, his chest expanding. The sun broke through the clouds, hitting his pale face. He squinted against the light, bringing a hand up to shield his eyes. "I had forgotten," he whispered. "I had forgotten the smell of the wind." Elara parked the chair near an old stone fountain that was dry and filled with dead leaves. She sat on the stone rim, facing him. "It's a start," she said. "It's a mess," Alistair corrected, looking at the weeds. "Just like me." "Gardens can be pruned, Alistair. Roots can be nurtured. It just takes a gardener who gives a damn." He looked at her. The sunlight caught the stray wisps of brown hair escaping her cap. For a moment, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was charged. He reached out, his hand hovering over hers, which rested on his knee. "Elara," he said softly, I have been a beast to you." "Yes, you have," she laughed softly. "A very loud beast. I am sorry." The apology hung in the air, fragile and sincere. Elara turned her hand over and squeezed his fingers. His skin was cool. Hers was warm. Apology accepted. "Now shall we take a tour of your jungle?" She unlocked the brakes on the chair and began to push him down the gravel path toward the lower pond. The ground sloped downward here. As they picked up a little speed, Elara pulled back on the handles to slow the momentum. The handles snapped. It happened in a split second. The metal, connecting the push handles to the frame, sheared off completely, as if they had been filed down. Elara stumbled back, the broken handles in her hands, watching in horror as the wheelchair, now free from her grip, surged forward down the incline. "Alistair!" she screamed. The wheelchair gathered speed, rattling violently over the uneven stones. At the bottom of the hill was the ornamental pond, deep, murky, and freezing cold. If he went in, strapped into that heavy chair, he would sink like a stone. He would drown before she could reach him. Alistair gripped the armrests, his eyes wide with terror. He tried to jam his hands against the wheels to stop them, but the friction burned his palms, and the momentum was too great. Elara didn't think. She hiked up her skirts and sprinted. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life, her boots slipping on the wet grass. The chair hit a bump and tipped onto two wheels, teetering dangerously close to the water's edge. "Lean back!" Elara shrieked. She threw herself forward, diving the last few feet. Her hand grabbed the metal frame of the chair, just as the front wheels went over the stone lip of the pond. She slammed her boots into the mud, using her body as an anchor. The weight of the chair and the man jerked her arm violently, nearly dislocating her shoulder. She let out a cry of pain but didn't let go. "I've got you!" she gritted out through clenched teeth. "I've got you!" She hauled backward with every ounce of strength she possessed. Slowly, agonizingly, the wheels groaned back onto solid ground. The chair settled. Elara collapsed onto the grass, gasping for air, her chest heaving. Alistair sat frozen, his face ashen, staring at the dark water just inches away. He slowly turned his head to look at her. She was covered in mud, her hair wild, clutching her shoulder. "The brakes," Alistair whispered, his voice shaking. They didn't work. The handles snapped. Elara sat up, wincing. She looked at the broken metal in her hand. The brake wasn't jagged. It was smooth, clean. "Someone sawed through them," she said, her voice cold. "Someone weakened the metal and covered it with black paint so we wouldn't notice." Alistair's shock turned into a cold, lethal fury. "Reginald!" "He saw us coming out," Elara realized. "He must have done it last night while the chair was in the hallway. He knew the slope would do the rest." Alistair unbuckled the strap across his waist. He leaned down as far as he could, reaching for Elara. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice urgent. "I'll live," she said, taking his hand. He pulled her closer, until she was kneeling by his chair. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away a smear of mud from her cheek. "He tried to kill me," Alistair said. "But he almost killed you." The intensity in his eyes made Elara's breath catch. This wasn't just gratitude. This was the fierce protectiveness of a man who had found something worth fighting for. "We have to go back inside," Elara said, her voice trembling slightly. "And we have to pretend it was an accident. If he knows, we know." "If he knows we know, he will try something more desperate," Alistair finished. "We play his game." "But Elara—" "Yes? Do not leave my side, not for a second." "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. They made their way back up the hill, slowly and carefully. As they reached the terrace, the French doors opened. Reginald stepped out, holding a glass of wine. He looked at the muddy wheelchair, then at Elara's disheveled state. A flicker of disappointment crossed his face, quickly replaced by a mask of concern. "Good heavens!" Reginald exclaimed. "What happened? Did you have a tumble?" Alistair looked at his cousin. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just a bit of clumsy steering, Reginald," Alistair lied smoothly. "Mrs. Vance is still learning the terrain. No harm done." Reginald's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at the chair, looking for the broken handles, but Elara had tucked the evidence into her pocket. "Well," Reginald said, taking a sip of wine, "one must be careful. Accidents happen so easily around here." "Indeed they do," Alistair said, "but I find I am becoming harder to kill than people expect." That night, Elara moved her cot into Alistair's room. She barricaded the door with a heavy dresser. They didn't sleep. Alistair sat in his bed, watching the door. Elara sat by the window, watching the grounds. "We need to strike back," Alistair said in the darkness. "We can't prove he tampered with the chair," Elara said. "He's too careful." "Then we force him to make a mistake," Alistair said. "The winter ball." "The what?" "The winter ball is in 2 weeks. It is held at the Duke's estate nearby. Reginald expects me to be dead or bedridden. He is planning to announce his stewardship of my estate there, to solidify his claim with society." So, Alistair turned to her, a wicked glint in his eyes. "We are going to attend, and I am going to show them that Count Thorne is very much alive. We will humiliate him in front of the entire county. We will flush the rat out into the open." Elara smiled. "A ball? I don't have a dress." "My mother's trunks are in the attic," Alistair said. "Open them. You will be the most beautiful woman there. And Reginald won't know what hit him." The attic of Blackwood Manor smelled of cedar and lost time. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that pierced the gloom as Elara knelt before a massive steamer trunk. "My mother had excellent taste," Alistair said. He had insisted on coming up with her, Mrs. Halloway and the gardener having carried his chair up the narrow stairs with much grunting and cursing. But she was vain. She kept everything. Elara lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in layers of tissue paper, lay a gown of midnight blue velvet. It was heavy, luxurious, and trimmed with silver thread that caught the light like trapped starlight. "It's beautiful," Elara breathed, running her fingers over the fabric. "But I cannot wear this. It is for a countess." "You are going to be the shield-bearer for a count," Alistair said, his voice low. "You need armor. That dress is your armor." The preparations for the ball became a covert operation. Reginald was still making trips to the village, likely spreading rumors of Alistair's deteriorating health to prepare society for the inevitable funeral. Meanwhile, inside the manor, Alistair was getting stronger. He spent hours doing upper body exercises. He couldn't move his legs, but his arms were becoming cords of steel. Elara watched him, admiring his determination. The man who had wanted to die was now sweating, cursing, and fighting for every inch of strength. On the night of the ball, the transformation was complete. Elara bathed and pinned her hair up in a complex twist, fastening it with a silver comb she found in the trunk. When she stepped into the gown, it fit as if tailored for her. The dark blue made her skin look like porcelain, and her brown eyes look like amber. She didn't look like a widowed nurse with a mountain of debt. She looked like a queen. She walked into Alistair's room. He was sitting in his chair, dressed in a black tuxedo that had been taken in to fit his leaner frame. His hair was slicked back, his jaw freshly shaven. He looked devastatingly handsome, but his eyes were what held her. They widened as she entered. "Elara," he breathed. He cleared his throat, looking suddenly shy. "You look formidable." "And you, my lord, look dangerous," she replied, smoothing her skirts. "Are you ready to walk into the lion's den?" "Roll," he corrected with a smirk. "I am ready to roll into the lion's den." Getting him into the carriage without Reginald seeing was the final hurdle. Mrs. Halloway, who had fully defected to their side after catching Reginald kicking the family dog, created a diversion in the kitchen, a small grease fire that required everyone's attention. Under the cover of smoke and shouting, Elara wheeled Alistair out the side door to the waiting carriage. As the carriage rattled down the dark country roads toward the Duke's estate, silence filled the cabin. It wasn't the awkward silence of their first meeting, but a thick, electric tension. Alistair reached across the gap and took Elara's hand. He didn't wear gloves. His skin was warm against hers. "I have not been honest with you," he said, staring at their joined hands. Elara's heart skipped a beat. "About Reginald? About us? About me?" He looked up, his blue eyes intense. "When you arrived, I wanted to die. I hated the world. I hated the light. You forced the curtains open. You forced me to eat. You forced me to care. It was my job, Alistair." "No," he shook his head. "It stopped being a job the moment you jumped into that freezing pond for me. No employee does that. I know about your debt, Elara. I know you need the money. But you risked your life. I couldn't let you drown. And I cannot let you fall," he whispered. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a lingering, intimate gesture that sent a jolt of heat straight to her core. "Tonight they will look at you and judge you. They will ask who this common woman is beside the cripple. I want you to hold your head high. You are worth 10 of them." Elara felt a tear slip down her cheek. "I am just a nurse, Alistair. Tonight," he said fiercely, "you are the woman who saved the Count. And if anyone disrespects you, I will run them over." Elara laughed, a wet, choked sound. "That's a start." The carriage slowed. Outside, the lights of the Duke's estate blazed like a beacon. Music drifted through the air. "Showtime," Alistair said, his expression hardening into a mask of cold command. "Let's go disappoint my cousin." The ballroom was a sea of pastel silks, glittering diamonds, and hushed gossip. A string quartet played a waltz in the corner, but the real entertainment was the bar, where Reginald Thorne was holding court. He stood with a glass of champagne in one hand, looking solemn and tragic. A group of local aristocrats surrounded him, nodding sympathetically. "It is a tragedy, truly," Reginald was saying, his voice loud enough to carry. "Poor Alistair. His mind is gone, you see. The paralysis has spread to his brain. He barely recognizes me. I fear this will be his last winter." "How dreadful," Lady Pembleton sighed. "And the estate?" "I shall do my duty," Reginald said, bowing his head humbly. "I have prepared the papers to take full conservatorship tomorrow. It is a heavy burden, but the Thorne legacy must be preserved." A heavy burden indeed. A deep, booming voice cut through the air, especially for a man with such a weak spine. The music faltered. Heads turned. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. At the top of the grand staircase stood nothing, but the double doors at the ground level swung open with a bang. Alistair Thorne rolled into the room. He sat straight as a rod, his tuxedo immaculate, his face sharp and healthy. His hands gripped the wheels of his chair with power. And walking beside him, one hand resting possessively on his shoulder, was Elara Vance, looking like a midnight storm in her velvet gown. Reginald dropped his glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the champagne foaming around his polished shoes. "Oh, Alistair!" Reginald stammered. "But You are bedridden. You are delirious." Alistair wheeled himself into the center of the room, Elara matching his pace perfectly. The silence was deafening. "I was indisposed, cousin," Alistair announced, his voice projecting to the rafters. "It seems the medication I was prescribed had some adverse effects, but thanks to my new caregiver, Mrs. Vance, I have made a miraculous recovery." He looked at Elara, and the warmth in his eyes was visible to everyone. Then he turned back to Reginald, and the warmth vanished, replaced by ice. "I heard you were planning my funeral, Reginald. I apologize for the inconvenience of staying alive." A titter of nervous laughter ran through the crowd. Reginald's face turned red, then a sickly shade of white. He saw his grasp on the estate slipping away. He saw the power of attorney papers in his pocket turning into worthless trash. He had to pivot. He had to destroy the source of Alistair's strength. Reginald stepped forward, his eyes venomous. "This is a trick. Look at him. He is being manipulated by this woman." He pointed a shaking finger at Elara. "Do you know who she is? She is a pauper, a widow with a mountain of gambling debt. She has seduced a vulnerable invalid to get her hands on the Thorne fortune," the crowd gasped. Whispers erupted. A fortune hunter? A seductress? Elara felt her face burn. She wanted to shrink, to hide. She felt the weight of her poverty, her shame. But then she felt Alistair's hand cover hers on his shoulder. He squeezed tight. Alistair spun his chair to face the crowd. "Vulnerable?" he roared. He slammed his hands onto the armrests of his chair. With a grunt of supreme effort, his triceps bulging, he pushed himself up. The room went dead silent. His legs were useless, dead weight. But his arms were strong. He lifted his entire body weight, hovering out of the seat for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. He held himself there, upright, defying gravity and biology through sheer will. "Does this look vulnerable to you?" he snarled. He lowered himself back down with control, not collapsing. He glared at Reginald. "Mrs. Vance is not a seductress. She is the only person in this room with a spine, including me. She saved my life when my own blood tried to end it." Alistair turned to the Duke, the host of the party. "Your Grace, I am formally announcing that I am resuming full control of the Thorne estates effective immediately. Any prior agreements made by my cousin are null and void." The Duke nodded, impressed. "Welcome back, Count Thorne." Reginald looked around. The eyes of society were no longer sympathetic. They were suspicious. He had been caught in a lie. The narrative of the dying cousin had been shattered. "This isn't over," Reginald hissed as Alistair wheeled past him. "You can't prove anything." "I don't need to prove it to the law to ruin you, Reginald," Alistair replied softly. "I just destroyed your credit in this county. No one will lend you a penny now." For the rest of the evening, Alistair and Elara were the stars. People flocked to them. Alistair introduced Elara not as his nurse, but as his companion. For the first time in her life, Elara felt seen. But as the clock struck midnight, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a creeping dread. Reginald had vanished from the party hours ago. "We should go," Alistair said, scanning the room. "Reginald is a coward, but a cornered rat bites." "I'll get the carriage," Elara said. "No, we go together." They left the warmth of the ballroom and stepped out into the chilly night air. The carriage was waiting. The driver, a hired man from the village, nodded to them. They climbed in. The door shut with a heavy thud. "We did it," Elara exhaled, leaning back against the velvet seat. "Did you see his face?" "I did," Alistair smiled, but his hand went to the pocket of his jacket, checking for the small pistol he had hidden there. "But the ride home is long, Elara, and dark." The carriage lurched forward, leaving the safety of the lights behind. They entered the heavy woods that separated the Duke's estate from Blackwood Manor. The trees pressed in close, blotting out the moon. Alistair watched the window. "He won't let us get back to the manor. Once I am there, I can call the solicitors, the bank, the police. He has to stop us on the road." "The driver?" Elara asked, panic rising. "I paid him double, but Reginald might have paid him triple." Suddenly the carriage slowed. It didn't stop, but it crawled. "Why are we slowing down?" Elara asked. Alistair pulled the pistol. "Get on the floor! Now!" Before Elara could move, a gunshot shattered the night. The carriage window exploded inward, showering them with glass. The carriage swerved violently, then tipped. The world spun upside down, wood splintered, metal shrieked, and everything went black. The silence following the crash was heavier than the carriage that lay overturned in the ditch. The world was sideways, smelling of splintered wood and wet earth. "Alistair?" Elara whispered, wiping blood from her lip. "I am here," he groaned. Alistair was pinned. The heavy velvet seat had crushed his paralyzed legs, trapping him. He reached out, his hand gripping her wrist with iron strength. "The driver, he jumped before we hit. This was no accident." As if summoned, boots crunched on the gravel above. A beam of light cut through the trees, blinding them. "Still with us, cousin?" Reginald's voice floated down, dripping with mock concern. "Or have you finally done the decent thing and died?" Reginald slid down the embankment, a hunting rifle in his hand. He peered into the wreckage, his face twisting into a grotesque smile when he saw Alistair trapped. "Tragic," Reginald sighed. "A carriage accident on a dark road. The paralyzed Count and his nurse, gone too soon. I shall mourn you briefly, Alistair, before I spend your fortune." "You won't get away with it," Elara hissed, shielding Alistair's body with her own. Reginald raised the rifle. "Who is going to tell? The driver is halfway to France. Step aside, Mrs. Vance. I'd prefer to kill him first." "No," Elara said, staring down the barrel. "Elara, move!" Alistair roared, struggling against the weight pinning him. "So noble," Reginald sneered. He cocked the rifle. "Two birds, one stone." In that split second, Alistair stopped fighting his trapped legs. He realized he didn't need them. He had spent weeks building his upper body into armor. He grabbed the splintered frame of the carriage door above them. With a primal roar, he wrenched the heavy wood off its hinges and hurled it outward. The door struck Reginald in the chest, knocking the wind out of him. The rifle fired harmlessly into the sky as Reginald tumbled backward into the mud. "Get his gun!" Alistair screamed. Elara scrambled out, lunging for the weapon, but Reginald was faster. He kicked her hard in the stomach, sending her sprawling, then raised the rifle butt to strike her. "You witch!" he shrieked. He never brought it down. A hand gripped his ankle, a grip like a steel vice. Reginald looked down in horror. Alistair had dragged himself out of the wreckage. He was lying in the mud, his legs useless behind him, but his eyes burned with a lethal blue fire. He looked not like a cripple, but like a predator. "Get away from her," Alistair snarled. He yanked Reginald's leg, pulling him down into the dirt. Reginald scrambled, panic overtaking him. But Alistair crawled over him, immune to the kicks, immune to the pain. He pinned his cousin to the ground, raising a jagged shard of glass he had pulled from the debris. "Do it," Reginald wept, terrified. "Kill me, you'll rot in prison." Alistair held the glass inches from Reginald's throat. His hand trembled with the urge to end the rot of his family line right there. "Alistair, stop!" Elara's voice cut through the red haze. She was clutching her side, breathless but alive. "He isn't worth your soul. Don't let him turn you into a monster. Look at me." Alistair froze. He looked at the weeping coward beneath him, then at the woman who had saved his life. He threw the glass into the woods. "You are nothing," Alistair whispered. He delivered a single, knockout punch to Reginald's jaw. The villain went limp. Alistair collapsed into the mud, the adrenaline fading. Elara crawled to him, pulling his head into her lap as the rain began to fall, washing away the blood. They had won. 6 months later, the winter chill had vanished from Blackwood Manor, replaced by the warm breeze of spring and the sound of a piano. In the music room, little Lily Vance sat at the grand piano, her fingers dancing over the keys. She looked healthy, her cheeks pink, her laughter ringing through the halls. The best doctors in London, paid for by the Thorne estate, had done their work well. Alistair sat in his wheelchair by the window, watching her, He looked different now. The bitterness was gone, replaced by a quiet strength. He wore a crisp linen suit, his shoulders broad and powerful. "She plays well," he said, as Elara walked in. "She plays for you," Elara smiled, resting a hand on his shoulder. "She calls you the king of the castle." "The king is just a man in a chair," he chuckled. "To us, you are a giant." Alistair turned his chair to face her. He took a small velvet box from his pocket. His hands, once used to throw things in anger, were now gentle. "Reginald was sentenced today," he said softly. 20 years, the estate is secure." "Justice served," Elara nodded. "There is one more thing," Alistair said, opening the box to reveal a sapphire ring. "I have fired my nurse." Elara raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And who will take care of you?" "I don't need a nurse," Alistair said, his eyes locking onto hers. "I need a partner, a wife. I cannot walk, Elara. I cannot carry you over the threshold. But I will support you, I will honor you, and I will love you until the last star burns out. Will you marry me?" Elara looked at the man who had rebuilt himself for her. She dropped to her knees, kissing him soft and slow. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." Across the room, Lily cheered, and for the first time in history, Blackwood Manor was truly a home. And that is the story of how a single mother walked into the den of a monster and found a man worth saving. It proves that sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones standing on 2 feet, but the ones who refuse to stay down when life tries to crush them. Reginald thought power came from titles and schemes, but he learned the hard way that true power comes from having something to protect. Alistair and Elara didn't just survive, they built a fortress out of their broken pieces. What did you think of Reginald's punishment? Did he deserve worse? Or was living in a cage the perfect karma for a man who tried to imprison his cousin? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of romance, betrayal, and redemption, please like this video. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Share this with a friend who loves a good drama. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.